if we try and grow this company 20, 30, 50% a year, we'll probably break what's working. So let's not do that. The next thing we said, okay, how can we grow more without breaking what works? So that's when we ultimately look at acquisitions.
Luke Merry buys and operates small businesses, taking over companies he didn't start and figuring out in the real world how to grow them without breaking what already works.
Look at this business. Imagine if we could buy this, right? It's the coolest thing in the world. That's added so much value to the overall group. So now let's look at other acquisitions. Let's repeat that process. We know what doesn't work and what didn't work. We know exactly what does work now. So let's just repeat that as many times as possible. That's the true value, right? Is like providing the service. And that's what those kind of people provide, is that value. But all the other stuff bogs them down. And that's really what we see as like our value add.
Hey, look, I wanted to know who should be tuning in your opinion, and why they should hang out and listen to this conversation to the end.
Okay. So who should be listening to this? I would say business owners, agency owners, people who love business. Like, we're going to share some knowledge. We're going to share our opinions, how we feel about business. I mean, Gledzy and I, we're on a path, right? We're on a journey, a lifelong journey. And we want as many people to be a part of it as possible.
All right, this is good. And for those who don't know much about you, why don't you tell me a little about like where you came from? Because you're here in Toronto, just around the block from me. But I honestly don't know much about your origin story.
So yeah, my origin story is fairly straightforward. I'm originally from Trinidad, right? In the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago. So I was born and raised there. My mom is from Barbados. My dad is from Trinidad. So I've been between the two islands most of my life. When I was about 14 years old, my parents decided they wanted to go to Canada, right? So we were living in Trinidad at the time. They brought us this place. We had a nice vacation. And then at the end of the vacation, they were like, all right, guys, like, what do you think of it, right? Uh, I was like, yeah, it's cool, whatever. And they're like, all right, we're moving here next year. I was like, no way, I hate this place. It's the worst thing in the world. Don't take me here. It's cold. I don't like it. Um, so anyway, we went through that. They brought me up here, my brothers and I. So I have two brothers. We all moved up here, went to high school, or did that whole shebang, and then here we are. So that's essentially a bit about my history. Or
All right. Yeah, as I said, we had so many conversations in the past, and I never dug a bit about that. I could feel the accent,
yeah,
but we were always talking about business, and we never had the chance to talk about this. I know this is, and why I'm asking that is because a lot of the people that listen to my podcast, they are expats,
right,
and sometimes they don't feel like they are valued because they are not from the country where they are living in.
right,
And sometimes they don't realize how much being an expat is important for you to like to adapt to new situations, especially when we talk about business and business owner entrepreneurship, right? You have to be able to adapt a lot. And that's why sometimes I like to talk about this. And when I hear a different accent, I'm like, okay, a business owner from a different country, they usually have like slightly different opinions and ways of seeing the world.
right. So you say the expats you talk to, they have a hard time in the countries they're living in. Like, they don't think.
Yes, sometimes yes, they struggle in the beginning. Yeah, uh, it, well,
I've
usually, yeah. Go ahead.
I've heard cases for that and against that, right? Like, people feeling that they don't feel welcomed in the country and they don't feel this and the third. But the reality of it is, the perception you have of yourself and the perception that you give to others is how they're going to perceive you, right? So if you're constantly going into conversations, you're constantly going into things thinking this person doesn't like me, they're not going to take me well. That's how you're going to come across, and that's how they're going to perceive you. I have a funny accent, right? I'm a white guy from Trinidad. A lot of people tell me that. It's uncommon. Um, and I've had people, they may like me, but they don't like my accent or they don't like how I talk. But the reality of it is, your perception of yourself is far more important than that. And if you go out to people with a high perception of yourself, they immediately, just maybe even a percentage or a couple of percent, will think higher of you. It's all about how you perceive yourself at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it's funny that you talk about that because I used to do business coaching,
Yeah,
and every time you talk about coaching, people, the vast majority of people, they don't like life coaching.
yeah,
And every time I go down this route, it's more like it's a problem of mindset,
yeah,
right? And you just touched this, like it's the mindset, especially when you are a business owner, that your mindset as an employee is different than as a business owner. So even the way that you perceive, and then sometimes you have to be, well, sometimes like it's a daily thing that a business owner has to be a, ready for uncomfortable situations and facing these limiting beliefs, because sometimes it's the way that we think about ourselves or we think about the business that doesn't make us grow, for example, right? Our business, and we hit some walls, which is normal whenever you are growing, right? A business. But it's really important. It was really cool that you mentioned that, like it's how you perceive yourself, like how these reflects when you interact with someone else. And I'm 100% in agreement with you in that part. But I wanted to go back into like when you came here to Canada, and I wanted to figure out how you ended up having your business, and like how did it go through, like from high school to where you are right now.
yeah, for sure. I didn't get enough into that. So I mean, I told you I came here, we went to high school, and whatever. So that was, probably one of the more choppy parts of my life, right? We had just moved up to Canada. I hated the place, didn't want to be here. I didn't pay attention to school at all, right? I didn't do well in school. Um, Ultimately, I went through that. I ended up going to Mohawk College. I went there for, I never wanted to go to school, right? But I ultimately ended up there. And I went there for about a year. I dropped out, right? So even in that school experience, there was some strike with teachers, and I was sitting there one day. I was like, "This is all bullshit." Like we were off of school for like a month, but ultimately, it did serve me well. Like some of my best friends today came from that school. Um, so a few guys from Trinidad that I know actually came up. We hit it off. We actually lived together for like a year. Um, those guys, they were groomsmen at my wedding, right? So I had some good experiences there. So ultimately, after leaving school and all that, we you know we're at a stage like, what's next, right? So I've had this kind of shit experience. So what are we gonna do next? So I was there sitting with my brother. We always chat, and we love business, right? We're reading all about business. We're doing all these things. We say, let's start a business. So we say, all right, what can we do? What do we know? And at that stage, it was fuck all, right? Like we had some experiences doing, we had little odd jobs throughout school and whatnot. So like I had done landscaping. I worked with a landscaping contractor for a little while. Um, One of my jobs in school, like I delivered pizzas. I took on so many jobs while in school, and that's what I really loved, is like learning about those businesses. And I was doing small parts in it, but learning little things. So yeah, my brother and I, we went and we started this landscaping company, right? So we were going around asking friends and family. We would drive, knock on doors, put flyers up, just saying like, "Hey, we'll cut your grass," right? Something simple. So we started doing that, and that started working out pretty well. Like we had a few recurring customers. We would go and cut their grass. It wasn't any big money maker, right? But it was something, right? And we were doing it. So we did that for a little while, and then at the time, at the time I had a girlfriend, right? And she was like, I'm moving up to Ottawa. I was like, well, fuck. All right, I'm moving up to Ottawa too, right? Uh, so I did that. And again, I was like, all right, what am I gonna do in Ottawa? So I went back to school. I was like, all right, let me go take a course in construction, right? And then I could get into contracting and get into all that. So I went and I did that. Um, then from there, again, school, I was like, why did I come back to school? I hate this thing. What am I doing here? So at the time I was, I was in school, but then I was looking at um, doing business as well, right? So I started a couple little things. Like, well, first of all, I had to start making money, right? So I went and got a job with a contractor. They were building, like, they were doing offices for Shopify and all these really cool projects. Um, so I went and worked with them for a while, and then I had a little bit of free time on my hands between school and that because wasn't really paying attention in school, right? And I went and worked door knocking for a charity as well. So this is another little odd job I picked up, right? I've had like so many odd jobs throughout my life, just doing like random shit. But I've learned a little something from each one, right? So one of the things I did there was just knocking on doors every day, just knocking on people's doors saying, hey, would you like to donate to this charity? They were doing like um, something to do with what was it? Like helping girls in Africa, right? Like young girls, helping feed, clothe them, and all that kind of stuff. So I did those two things for a while in school. Between I was working the contractor part time, um, working on door knocking. Anyway, all of that in a nutshell to say it kind of blew up, right? I ended up stretching myself way too thin, and then from there, what did I do? We said, all right, what's the next business? We wanted to paint houses, right? So my brother and I talked about it again. We said, all right, we're gonna paint houses. So again, we're knocking on doors, we're saying, let me paint your house, all that kind of stuff. We got a good few, we got some good work. We would paint the doors, paint the houses, and the interior, like bathrooms and that kind of thing. So we did that for a little while. Again, ultimately, kind of blew up. I was like, why am I in Ottawa? I don't really want to be here. Um, Me and the girl never worked out. Long story short. So at that point, I was like, all right, you know what? This isn't making any serious money. It's cool and all, but yeah, I want to go back home and be closer to the family and all that, right? So at that point, I was like, all right, I'm doing nothing, right? Like, what am I gonna do with my life? And one of the things I love is like, I would always just be like looking at businesses for sale, right? At the time, I was like, I couldn't buy a business, but I was like, this is something I love. One of the things I loved was that like it helped me understand the world I lived in better. Like I would see these businesses and you would just see like the craziest things. You'd be like, okay, this business makes napkins. I'd be like, fuck, I use napkins every day, but I didn't know there's a company for this. And you would see like they would post a little snapshot of their financials and stuff like that. So I would see like the ins and outs of what makes up the world that we live in, right? That was what initially got me interested. So I was always just scrolling, looking at that. I would tell my brother, like, hey, what do you think? Like, look at this business. Imagine if we could buy this, right? It's the coolest thing in the world. Um, and he was like, all right, these are cool ideas, but like, what are you gonna do with a restaurant in Australia, right? So I would show him like the create, like just all over. I was like, yeah, you know what, you're right. And then he was like, dude, if you want to be serious, like the family has a business. It was in Trinidad. I was in Canada at the time, so I didn't get involved in the business much. I worked there like growing up. Um, I got into like the accounts and they would show me all those and all that kind of stuff. So I did a bit of that growing up. And my brother was like, dude, if you want to be serious about this, like talk to dad, see if he would be interested in investing in a business. So we did that. We went to my dad and we were like, hey dad, like we love looking at these businesses. We think there's opportunity here. Like, what do you think? He's like, boys, I think that's a great idea, but I don't know anything about these ones you're showing me. Find a business in something I know, right? And what he knows is pumps, engineering, industrial services, that kind of thing, right? That's what his business was for the 30 years. And I could get into a bit about that business as well. But he was like, yeah, boys, find a business within what I know. And for sure, if the numbers make sense, I would be interested. And you guys could learn the ropes and all that kind of stuff, working with me and that kind of thing. So basically, for my brother and I, that was like game on, right? We were like, all right, this guy says he's game, let's do it. Within like 2 weeks, we found a business for sale, a pump company um, in Toronto. It's called Heart Pump. It's actually the company we own now. Um, so basically, we found that business. It was just up online for sale, right on one of the broker sites. I think it was businessforsale.com is where we found it. So we see this little pump business for sale, and we say, "Oh my God, this is actually like exactly what he was just talking about 2 weeks ago." Um, so it had all the details. We brought it to him, and we were like, "Hey, we found one. What do you think?" And he's like, "Boys, this business is brilliant. The numbers make sense. It's exactly what I know. I know the product lines they carry, all that kind of stuff." So we said, "All right, well, let's do this." So we reached out to the brokers, we talked to the owners, we did that whole works, um, and then ultimately, we put in an offer. We put in an offer that made sense. The previous owners liked it. There was three guys. They were originally technicians that they bought over the business prior, I think about 5 years before, from the original owner who retired. But they were near retirement of themselves, right? So
Themselves.
they were all in their sixties. They were kind of pulling their hair out, right? Like one guy was going this way, the next guy was going this way, and the other guy was like, "Dude, where are you guys going?" Right? So when we met them, they were fed up. Like they were like, "All right, we're running this thing. We're running ourselves ragged." We like two of them wanted out. The other one was like, "I like working, but I don't want to work with these guys." Uh, um, so ultimately, long story short, we bought the business. Now we went in with all these big grand plans, ideas. Like um, we would sit together just as a family, because we were doing it as a family, and we'd be like, all right, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do this and this, and we had all these grand ideas. And then when it came down to it, doing those ideas, it was like, okay, this doesn't work because this whole thing's gonna break down, and this doesn't work. But anyway, ultimately, we implemented a ton of things. We did some good things, some bad things, but ultimately it came down to the best success we had was just doing better for the customers, improving the service schedule, doing a couple other things. Ultimately, our successes outweighed our failures. Like we've doubled the company in the last 5 years, right? Now, saying, originally saying it may have sounded like, we came in with this helter-skelter approach, right? We didn't really like it. I'm kind of presenting in a way that it might sound like that, but we did have a plan. We had a structured plan. We sat with the bank and we said, look, within 5 years, we're going to double this business. Here's exactly how we're going to do it. All the other ideas were cool and all, but here's how we were going to do it. We put out a business plan to them, and the bank was like, yeah, this is good. Like, you guys can do that for sure. A few of the things that we actually did that really worked was, I'll give you one example. One of the previous owners, he was an older guy. He would basically take calls. The phone was just ringing off the hook all the time, right?
Wow.
He would take calls, and he would be like, he would kind of pick and choose jobs, right? He'd be like, yeah, we'll work on that. And then he'll write down a piece of paper, tear it off, hand it to one of the technicians. They would go to site, right? So in the morning, the technicians would come in. He had a bunch of things written down. He would tear it off, give them each like three little pieces of paper, and they would say, all right, these are my jobs for the day, right? So one of the simple little things we did, we said, all right, let's put a service schedule in place, right? So we use a software. We implemented a whole ERP software, one called NetSuite. And basically, one of the simple things we did was just put that on a structured schedule. So now we see, okay, exactly where everyone's scheduled for the week, where are the gaps in the schedule, and then, all right, now our job's to fill those gaps, right? What
Yeah.
that did was essentially created a structured process for just maximizing the time and the billable hours of our technicians. So that had a big impact. We started reaching out to some of the large contractors and building those relationships with them. Whether they buy products from us or whether they buy, do services from us, we really grew through just adding more value to the customers. Some of the customers knew who we were, like, company has a great name, but they didn't know the full capability of what we do. Like some were buying parts, but they didn't know we could do service for their teams as well. Some were buying full equipment packages, but they didn't know we had the little parts for them as well. Just little things all throughout, right? And basically, over 5 years, we just tweaked that, added technicians, and just improved that. We did a whole rebrand of the company and all these other things. Ultimately, where we're at now, again, we've doubled the company. We've implemented a strong leadership team. So one of the things we started doing was EOS. I don't know if you're familiar with that. You know the book Traction? So Traction by Gino Wickman. A friend of mine, Dan Guest, right? He owns a plumbing company called Guest Plumbing. I did a podcast with him, right? Because I did my own little podcast about a year ago. And he was like, EOS changed my life. It changed the game for my company. Like, so many things came out of this. I was like, dude, what the hell is that? Tell me more about this, because I want that, right? He was like, read the book Traction and then get back to me. We'll chat. So okay, I bought the book, went and read it. He might have even given me a copy, I can't remember. But beside the point, he gave me that book, I read through. I was like, this is exactly what we need. I was like, Dan, tell me more about this. How do I implement this? He was like, look, you could self-implement or you could hire somebody to help you out with it. So he said, all right, we're going to self-implement because we don't want to add costs to the business, right? That's a big thing that we do is like, okay, we're cutting costs, we're increasing revenue, right? That's how we grow profit. So he said, all right, we're not going to add more costs to the business. Let's just self-implement. So my dad and I, we sat one day and we're like, all right, we're going to implement this thing. And when we sat down, we were like, all right, what now? What do we do? And we just kind of sat there for like an hour. We ended up just chatting, and at the end of it, we were like, okay, we've gone nowhere. We don't know how to do this. Like, so I called Dan, right? And I was like, Dan, what do I do here? Like, we're trying to implement. We have no idea. He's like, dude, just stop wasting your time. Like, get an implementer, right? So he recommended the one that he used, and we called the guy. His name's Jeremy. He's fucking phenomenal. Sorry, can I swear on the podcast?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this guy's amazing, right? So we sat and we did what's called the 90-minute meeting. So we learn about him, he learns about us, puts together a plan. Ultimately, we did that. It all centers around, okay, look at your organization, find where the gaps are in people, right? So you look at your org chart, they call it the accountability chart. What are the core functions of your company that have to happen? And who's in charge of those? Who's accountable? You have to have one person accountable for each thing. So we went through that whole process and we realized, look, we have all these different things, but either like I'm accountable or two people are accountable. And so we're doing well, right? But it's not really clicking and we're pulling our hair out being like all that. So when we actually sat down with this, the first thing we did was structure the organization charts, right? So we have our visionary, that's under the whole EOS process. Visionary is like big picture thinking, some key relations with clients, kind of the strategic vision and everything, right? So we put my dad in that spot because we're like, he's a visionary. This guy has 30 years experience. He knows the direction we're going. He's telling us what to do and we're going to implement it, right? So we put him in that spot. Now there's an integrator spot. That's the person who really like ties everything together, make sure the company's profitable, make sure this guy's doing his job, make sure everyone is working cohesively, right? So that's really where my skill set shines, is like putting the right people in the right seats and then holding them accountable to what they're supposed to be doing. Through that, we found out, we have sales, we have operations, and we have finance. All we really had was operations. We didn't have a proper financial team. We didn't have a proper sales team. So then we had to start saying, okay, who are the right people for these things? We ultimately first looked within the company. So we have one guy, Kevin, there. He's incredible, phenomenal. We basically said, all right, our operations guy, this guy is it. Like he's gonna knock this out of the park. So we put him in operations. And then we just went through and structured everything. We realized actually in our company in Trinidad, Engage Engineering Agencies, that's sort of within the overall group. We realized we had an amazing finance manager over there. This lady's incredible. She structures the team. She knows the finance like the back of her hand. one thing overall is like we trust her, right? We could trust this lady with our lives, so we could definitely trust her with our finances. So we basically took her from the finance side, and now she's doing finances for the overall group. So we plunked her into the the finance seat that we had empty, and then she basically built a team around that and structured everything. Um, so yeah, all that to say, like we've done so much, we've implemented some things, we've learned a lot of lessons through a lot of failures, but ultimately we did a few good things in the mix that ultimately made up a good success story. Now that's sort of where we've been. I may have gone on a long stretch on that. But where we're going is essentially we've learned all these things. We now know, okay, this is how we structure things. This is exactly what we do. These processes we follow. We've built a whole framework around it. We've spent a lot of time and energy on that. Now that we've learned that one thing and sort of entered the Canadian market, the next thing is, okay, how can we expand our efforts and expand our impact as far as wide as possible, right? So we came up with this in one of our vision building sessions, right? So once a quarter, we sit down as a leadership team and we come up with a plan. We say, all right, this is what we're going to focus on for the next quarter. But we're also going to look at our 10-year and our 5-year pictures and see, okay, where do we want to be in 10 years? Where do we have to be in 3 years to make that happen? And then on a quarterly basis, what are we going to do to make those things happen, right? So in our vision building session, we were like, all right, we can grow 10-15% a year just organically, just doing what we're doing, right? And that's going to double the company itself every 5 years. If you go 15% a year, you'll double every 5 years. So that was one aspect of it, but that still doesn't get us to where we want to go. We want to have as much impact as possible, right? So the next thing we said is, okay, if we try and grow this company 20, 30, 50% a year, we'll probably break what's working. So let's not do that. Let's not. So that's the next thing we said, okay, how can we grow more without breaking what works, right? So that's when we ultimately looked at acquisitions. We've done one acquisition that's added so much value to the overall group. So now let's look at other acquisitions. Let's repeat that process. We know what doesn't work and what didn't work. We know exactly what does work now. So let's just repeat that as many times as possible. So that's ultimately where we are. We're planning to grow the group organically through our existing companies. And when I say organic, it's like there's a lot of hard work that goes into that, right? It's growing sales, doing the operation, doing all the good stuff that we all do, as well as let's acquire companies to fuel that growth. Um, and that's essentially where we're at now. We're looking to acquire companies, we're looking to build the overall group, and we're looking to implement systems and processes that provide value to the companies and provide values to the people we work with, both on the customer level and the employee level. We want to, that's ultimately, we sat down and talked about our tagline of what we're about. And it came down to, our whole thing is we want to improve lives through the solutions we offer, right? So our little tagline for this one company is improving lives through pump solutions, right? So we want to improve the lives of the customers we deal with. We want to make their job easier, right? They don't care about this pump. They care about, okay, there's a leak here. Our residents are complaining. We need this fixed, or we need flow in our, they care about what's going on in their day. Nobody cares about a pump, right? They care about the solution it provides. So we want to improve the lives of our customers. Now, in order to do that, we're not going to do that by ourselves. We have employees, and they all are fantastic employees. They do great work. So we want to improve their lives as well. So we improve the lives of our employees, they can improve the lives of our customers, and it trickles down and goes on and on, right? So yeah, that's ultimately where we're at.
All right. No, I loved it, and I let you tell the whole thing. I was holding myself like not to interrupt, but I just wanted to cover some beats that I love, and it tying up with the whole expat thing.
Right. Okay.
I know that I moved from Brazil to the UK, then UK back to Brazil, a different city. It was like I felt an alien there, even
Yeah.
though inside of my own country. And then we came here to Canada as well. That kind of like changes. And now I have kids as well. And we felt well, when we moved from Brazil to Toronto, kind of we felt this. They kept talking about Brazil, how they missed toys, they missed some of the people in there as well, right? Like we had family there. But I think this experience that you mentioned about like not wanting to go to school, not liking the place, these are some of the things that I said that sometimes we struggle as expats. So we have different experiences that people there like they live there since they were born. So this kind of like makes us adapt better to tough situations. And and I love the fact that you started doing some of these small business ideas with your brother, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't know what I didn't pick up what age you were. It's like I'm assuming you were like late
I,
teens when you
yeah, at the
started
time we
doing
were
the
probably no more than like 17. I can't remember exactly,
yeah.
but it was.
Yeah, so that's what I thought, right? It's like,
Yeah,
and it's amazing that it touched like three areas that are areas that I literally want to buy companies in there, right? So
right.
landscaping, oh my god, like there is a need. It doesn't matter like if there is a pandemic or not. Like
Yeah, you have to
landscaping
cut your
will be
grass.
there.
Yeah,
Exactly. So it's like I don't like to cut grass. I don't like to look after my grass,
yeah,
and then like I'm happy to pay someone to do that, either a teenager or a really great company, right? It depends on the budget, right? But that's it. That's I am in a part of my life that I'm like, you know what? I hate doing that. Like I'd rather like take my money and take this headache out of me. But and that's why I like this kind of business because and the way that you started with your brother, right? It doesn't need much. All you have to do, and then like you also have like you were knocking on doors. This is like sales, door to door sales skills is amazing. If you have these, you're never gonna starve. Doesn't matter. You're and even when you said that you started doing the hoping charities, like oh, I can only imagine the struggles of like people like saying no to your
oh my
face,
god,
right? Like so,
it was
yeah,
insane. And you know,
but you see, yeah, go ahead.
that was one of the hardest things for me. Like what you mentioned with the expats, and they have different languages and all that kind of stuff, right? One thing with me is like people like my accent, they say it's cool and whatever. But at the same time, it's like you never really feel like you're getting through to someone or you're like on the same page with them, right? You always kind of feel like, is this person really understand? Like, are they picking what I'm putting down? So that was a big kind of like struggle point for me. So at the time, I was young, right? But I was like, okay, how do I get over this hurdle? And the best way, in my opinion, to do that, I think I probably watched a YouTube video or something, and they were like, if you have a pain point, you have something you don't understand, lean into that and just do reps, right? So that's when we
Hmm.
started doing like the door knocking and those kind of things. It's like, okay, if I could walk up to somebody's door, knock on it, and say, hey, buy my stuff, right? That's terrifying. That's like when you, I don't know if you've ever done that, but walking up to that door is like the hardest thing you'll ever do the first few times. Especially when you already have the thought of like, okay, they even understand what I'm saying and all that kind of stuff, right? Because I understand what I'm saying, but a lot of times I'll say things and people will be like, dude, what are you saying? Um, so that was a big like thing for me. And then yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but ultimately like we basically leaned into it and we started knocking on doors. We actually got some sales, and that was like, fuck man, that was incredible.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and it's the whole thing about the skill that you develop, and and the fear of rejection,
yeah,
and the pain of rejection, and then overcoming that
yeah.
pain,
Overcoming
right?
that is the best feeling you'll ever do.
Yeah, yeah, but because you know, like we, I like to say that kids, we are more kind of like resourceful, and then we are more like flexible. The more pain we receive, we learn how to handle, and then we become more resilient the
Yeah,
more reps that we do. And what I say is that you have to be okay, and you have to be kind of like yeah adaptable whenever there is an uncomfortable situation. Doesn't matter what it is, right? We're having a bad conversation with someone, uncomfortable conversation with your employee, with your family, with like you know like a service provider. Like people are afraid of like picking a fight or being rejected, right? So but once you get comfortable with the uncomfortable, it kind of unlocks different kind of skills for for you. right? And what I like about this experience, and when you said like, I don't know if you've ever done. My dad, when I was like early teens, he had a a factory, and one of the things he would do is like long cups of aluminum cups, and that for a Brazilian, if you go to the beach, all you want is like when you are an adult, right? In theory, all you want is like a freezing cold beer in a cup like that because it's aluminum and it feels even colder. So there is a thing in there. So whenever we were on holidays, summer holiday, he would pick me out of we were four boys. He picked me to go with him from one person to the other one like in the beach. It was like
Right.
my friends were there and my dad made me kind of just imagine this. Like I was like 13, 14 years old, like trying to like interested in girls, and then
Yeah.
suddenly my friends looking at me selling these cups in the
Right.
beach, which is kind of like already seen as like a lower level kind of class, right?
Yeah.
So for
It must
me,
have
it's
been
like,
terrifying.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I'm like, oh, the shame, right?
Yeah.
It was terrifying and the shame. And then we also worked in a street market. I was kind of like, I wouldn't talk to anyone when I was a kid. Like my dad had also that other business, right? That was the biggest unlock for me because I had to sell stuff. It was like we would sell any kind of snack, savory snacks or sweets, candies, like whatever. Like I know most of them. And then like, and it was just like, it doesn't matter if I was in pain. Sometimes I had a stomach ache. My mom would make me go,
You had
right?
to do it.
And exactly. And then we went, my mom is Japanese born in Brazil.
Right.
So, so just so you know, my wife calls her the colonel, right?
The cool.
Because my mom is like a freaking military Japanese kind of
Right.
like hardcore woman, right? And she was like hard. She was one of the meanest bosses I ever had in my life, right? And she was my mom,
Yeah.
and she would treat us as any one of the employees. So we had to be the best employees, and then that started to make me see, for example, how the employees would behave. So I was an employee that I had some sort of like skin in the game because it was over. After all, it was my company, but I
Yeah.
didn't feel like it, right? As you said,
Yeah.
it's a
You're a
family
kid. You don't
business.
think of that then.
Exactly. I feel like I want to be playing, like
Yeah.
freaking like let these are the people that are hired to do the work, not me,
Yeah.
right? But my mom was like, yeah, yeah, we gotta do it. Like so, and it was like rain, like I would get wet. Had to do it. Had to do it. And I remember like sometimes like we had to wake up at 4:30, 5 a.m. during the weekends, holidays, school holidays. School holidays for me was like no holiday. It was like work season,
That's work time to get into it.
full time work season, right? Because during school days, like cool, like Monday to Friday, I didn't have to go to work. Saturday, Sunday, and holidays, working.
That's work
So,
time.
and I was super introvert when I
Right.
was like in my 7 to 10 years old. I was super introvert, but because of the businesses my dad put us in, right? These family businesses that unlocked me. And then sometimes I feel like when we call about introverts, ambiverts, extroverts, I think I was forced to be an extrovert, right?
But that
But
is
sometimes,
so valuable. Like getting that
yeah,
experience at such a young age, and then you know you might have been introvert inclined, but now you're an extrovert and you're with people and you're comfortable with that, right? There's
yeah,
do you follow Monish Prabrai at all? Do you know who that is?
no,
So Monish Prabrai, he's an incredible investor, right? Like he followed the whole Buffett principle, Charlie Munger, this kind of thing, right? He's an Indian fellow, but he started an IT company. He grew it massive, he sold it, and then he actually bid on, Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett. They do those things where you could have dinner with them, you could bid and have dinner with them, right? So he did that, and he ultimately became friends with them, right? And he does the value investing. He's done very well for himself, right? Now, Monish Prabhai talks about that because he invests in companies all the time. That's what he does, and he says one thing that he looks for is, he calls it the lemonade test, right? The lemonade stand test. And it's simple. Did this kid or did this guy, woman, whoever it is, did they have a lemonade stand when they were a kid, right? You see like little 12-year-olds, 10-year-olds, they're standing up there on the side. And it doesn't have to be a lemonade stand, right? It could be any sort of little business. But he looks at that and he says, did they have a lemonade stand? That's like the first question he asks almost. Um, I may be wrong on that, right? I'm paraphrasing it. I saw it in a podcast he
Hmm.
was on the other day, and it caught my eye. But he looks for that, right? And then that builds into so many other things. And the principle behind that is, he talks about up until the age of, I think it's 21, right? Your brain is developing, and the tendencies and the things that you do leading up throughout your whole life, that little stage is when you actually like pick up what you're going to do for the rest of your life. Like you look at things like, look at Bill Gates, right? Why is Bill Gates Bill Gates? Or why was he a software developer? Why did he get into what he was getting into? He was coding from the time he was a little kid. And because of that, because he was in that developmental stage, he built coding skills by the time he was 21, that if you were to start at say age 30, it would take you, instead of 5 years to pick that up, it would take you from 30 up until in your 80s. You probably still wouldn't be as good as him, right? So the
Yeah.
overall principle is when you start those things young and you get into it and you put in the reps, and it builds your mind in a different way, and then it sets you up for life. So that those things that your dad did and your mom did, making you sell cups and making you work when you didn't want to work and all those things, that is ingrained in you. And like Leslie, you and I are friends, so I talk to you all the time. And the things that you do, like you tell me you're waking up at 4 a.m. and you're just ripping work. I know 90 or 100% of the time you don't want to do that, but you
Oh yeah.
you you have that resilience in you, right? And that's probably all because of the principles that your parents taught you at those age, like
Yeah.
fighting through what you don't want to do, doing things you're uncomfortable with. It's ingrained in you at this point, and that's probably above most things is what will actually contribute to your success in the long run.
Yeah. So it's funny that you said that because when you mentioned that, like, of course, I hated when I was a teenager,
Yeah,
right? I didn't want to work. It's like, who wants to work when you're a kid, right?
yeah,
But I, it's been like decades that I noticed that, like, in my early 20s, I'm like, oh my God, actually, that was the biggest unlock of my life. So I'm super happy that my parents, and especially my mom, my dad, for being a crazy entrepreneur without any kind of knowledge of anything, not never just trying things randomly, right? Failed everywhere in business, but I think in forming the kids, me and my brothers, I think like we were never afraid of working after that, right? We all took, we either studied a lot and now we work hard a lot, right? Waking up like, funny that you mentioned that today I had to wake up at 12:30 because I had a freaking meet at 1
no way, you're
for two
insane.
hours and it was, yeah. So but so the thing is that it builds resilience,
Yeah,
as we were discussing, right? And this reflects on the business. I love this lemonade stand kind of test because I've noticed that as well in all the conversations with business owners now that I'm dealing way more with like acquisitions, right? You can see that, that there is like that there are signs in there. That's why, like, I never asked you, but I saw signs about your life, right? I'm like, okay, like, I think we clicked because of that, right? But I think, and even like when you're talking about Bill Gates, right? When I raised my hand, I don't know if you noticed that I didn't have a computer until I was 21. So, and I picked up coding it took me 15, 20 years to get good,
Right. And when
right?
if you had done it at
Like,
10, you probably
and
would have picked up in a year, right?
exactly, exactly. That's why I started teaching my daughter when she was, I don't know, 4 or 5. As soon as she started learning how to write in English, I was already showing her how to code, and my son as well now. So and this, and weirdly enough, like my daughter, she wants to have a business, and then she was, last year she was talking about, she was making all the plans to have a lemonade stand. It's so funny that you mentioned that. So she and her friend, they started creating the whole business plan and everything. There were flaws, that's why I never went through it, but I let them fail as well to feel it. But then she started doing some necklaces and, like, these things with elastic. But anyways, they sold stuff, they made money, right? And my daughter hated, and then she made a partnership because she didn't want to sell. So another kid in this, she would just ask the other kids to make the jewelry or whatever they call it, and she would just sell, and she would take a 50% cut. And I'm like, what? You should
That's
have, you
absolutely
should be
brilliant.
selling. Exactly. But I was more impressed with the other kid that she figured out that she could ask a lot of kids
Yeah.
that they would do the things, and she would sell, and she would keep most of the money. And when I figured out, it was like sometimes more than 50%. And I'm like, what? Right? Like, it's like you have to learn how to sell yourself. And then she hang out with some friends in here in the neighborhood, and then they started to sell. So everyone would have to build the things and then sell the things together. And then it was 50-50. I'm like, okay, now we're talking, right? But I give so much value to what my parents did that I try to kind of pass in a less destructive way. Thanks, mom. But I think it was important for me. I think I needed that, and I feel like I know where to push my daughter, my son, uh, how to go in there. Like my baby daughter is still too young for that, but she will be in that path too. And one thing that I wanted to mention as well is from your story, the change, because you and your brother, you literally started businesses from scratch. This experience is amazing, right?
Yeah.
We can think back into like the your youth, but having that experience and then figuring out by yourself, for example, I can buy this business, right? It's something that, look, unless you go to a university that talks about that, back then, now with the University of YouTube, yeah,
Oh, you
the
could do
information about
anything with
that,
YouTube, right?
exactly, yeah. It's like, that's why, like, when you said like, oh, why am I here,
Yeah.
right? I went back to school. I wouldn't go back to school. I would just spend more time on YouTube learning things that I really want,
Yeah. You can
right?
learn
Because
literally
exactly,
anything in the world on YouTube. You could spend a day, you could spend 10, you could spend as long as you
yeah,
want, just running
yeah.
through endless
and
resources.
and now with AI, it's like, doesn't matter what it is. It's like, there's no excuse when people say I don't know how to do that. I'm like, have you asked any LLM, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever is your poison? Have you asked questions about this?
Yeah. This,
Usually the answer is no. I'm like, look, how can you say it's like, so there
they're
is
not
no
even
excuse for
trying
you
at
to
this
say
point.
exactly that. Don't say you don't know that. It's like,
Yeah.
you have to give it a try at least, so you have a bare minimum information, so you're not completely ignorant on any topic if you want to talk about something, right? But nevertheless, I think the experience that you had, like starting making bad decisions, bad, like
Yeah.
now
Well,
in
there
the
was tons of bad
hindsight, like
decisions along the way, I'll tell you.
going to Ottawa, like you
Yeah.
killed the business, like
Yeah.
literally. And, like, I didn't understand, like when you we did the painting, were you coming back to Toronto, or your brother went to
Oh no,
Ottawa with
that
you?
well actually the painting was just me by myself actually, and it was brutal. Like
Okay,
again I was door knocking trying to get these customers, and it was freezing. Like Ottawa winters, I don't know if you know about them, but they're
it's a
cool.
bit harder than here.
Yeah. So that one was brutal, and honestly, that one didn't last too long because again, painting houses, you could do one job, but then you need to fill that pipeline or lead flow, right? And at the time, I knew nothing about ads. I think I tried to run ads. I spent like $800 at the time trying to run an ad, and I realized the website I was pushing those through didn't even work. So I just wasted money, uh, and it was a whole thing. Like I made so many mistakes, and I could spend a whole hour telling you about all the mistakes I made doing that. Um,
Yeah.
but
but
yeah,
but
that
the
was by
mistakes
myself.
the mistakes made you who you are right now,
Yeah,
right? Like
absolutely.
I think it's what I call the fail fast, right? It's like you failed fast. You tried something and you failed, and you learned from it, and then you tried something different, right? Which comes down to what one thing that I want to mention afterwards. Like, but you figure out that there was a market of companies that could be sold, and then the insight that your brother had, like, I'm like, wait, I didn't know you had a business back in Barbados, right?
Oh, in Trinidad. Yeah, I
Trinidad,
get.
sorry, in
Yeah,
Trinidad. So I'm like, okay, like, oh, now it makes sense. And then literally you had that's I understood why you always said that you had a family business, because then your dad was the investor of like buying, but then you and your brother were the operators, right? Literally, you took over from the previous owners, and that scenario, we know that it's so common, right? Like a company is ran by some people that used to work for the company, for example, or they used to do that work for someone else, and they decided to create their own company,
yeah,
and then they have no clue about business.
yeah. And you see that a lot.
And,
And actually, that's one of the
exactly.
things that is such a large opportunity in the sense that either working with those people or even just providing them the succession plan. But that is a huge opportunity in itself because these people are great operators, right? They know how to do the work, they do a great job, they know the customers, they satisfy them. But all the other stuff, the stuff that really sucks, they're not too good at, and they don't really like it anyway, right? Like I'm talking accounts and the admin, all the kind of bullshit that comes with running a business. Most people don't realize that that's really the bulk of the things, the customers and the things, like that's the true value, right? Is like providing the service, and that's what those kind of people provide is that value. But all the other stuff bogs them down, and that's really what we see as like our value add is like
Yeah.
we know how to serve the customers, we know how to do all those great things, and we could support you doing those, and we could carry that on even after you're done. But we also are very good at the admin and the systems and the tying everything together. And that's what we come in with. It's like, okay, let's take what you have that's already great and let's make it even better and let's make it run smooth so we could even make it 10
Yeah.
times as great, right?
Yeah. And this is one of the things that we talk a lot about this, and we help when we were talking about like mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah.
Because if the business, and that's why I like this business that you were talking about, like the maintenance, painting, construction, like everything that you talked, I love this kind of business because they happen even if people give up an okay service.
Yeah.
If they're really bad at sales, if they are like really bad at so many things, they still have business.
Yeah.
They still, because the need is in there. So the need is so huge that people are willing to pay a bad service provider just to get the thing done, right? So the opportunity for someone like us that we're like trying to buy a business, it's just like, let's fix the operation, let's fix the finance, the whole admin, like the back office stuff is sorted. Like whoever was the owner, or like the people on the ground doing the delivery, they have to be great at that. And that's it. We look after that thing that is boring, but it's kind of like 90% of the business actually is in there to be great. Of course, the delivery,
Yeah.
the greater it is, the more business you're gonna get, right? For
Absolutely.
for
I
for the
agree.
referral perspective, right? But it's just that a lot of people that they migrate from being an employee to
Mhm.
become a business owner, they are not business savvy. They don't have this knowledge, and they think they have to do everything themselves, and usually to save money. like
Yeah,
like you guys did. Like let's do the operation ourselves. Like
yeah,
no, you want to go fast. Like hire someone that knows exactly what how to implement what you want to be implemented. That's it. It's like you're going to speed up 2, 3, 4 years. Uh,
and there's a.
Yeah,
It's funny, we're a profit-driven organization, right? Most businesses are. We're trying to drive profit, all these things. But I heard this put the best way last night. I was listening to a podcast, right, with a Trinidadian businessman. He dropped it like 2 days ago. Mr. Warner. He ran a company in Trinidad called Massey, right? The Massey Group. They're one of the largest conglomerates in the Caribbean. They're expanding into the US and all those things, right? He talked about that. Like he went to Harvard, he went to Big Four consulting groups, and all this. I think he worked at McKinsey. Um, and he talked about that for the majority of his career. He was profit driven. Like it's all about the bottom line, this, that. And when he came late into his career, what he realized is that, okay, we're slashing costs, we're doing all these things, but the reality of it is that the inputs matter so much more than the scoreboard. And he put it beautifully. He said, if you're looking, let's say you're playing cricket, right? Or you're playing soccer, whatever sport. If you're constantly looking at the scoreboard, you're not playing the game, right? So he said
yeah,
in business, it's almost kind of counterintuitive. You're looking at the scoreboard, you always focus on the scoreboard, but you're not kicking the ball right in front of you, right? So one thing
hmm
a lot of these guys do, and or one thing that he talked about is that if you focus on kicking the ball and you focus on playing with your team and playing the game right, the scoreboard will take care of itself. And that's one of the, I thought this and I always felt it. But hearing him say that, I was like, this is the most brilliant thing in the world. It's like, play the game right and we will profit. Profit will take care of itself. And that kind of ties into what, you talked about before, where you're saying, like, we were saying, no, let's not spend money to get this better. Let's do it ourselves. But the reality of it is, if you do it yourself, you're gonna spend 2, 3 years trying to figure it out and probably not do it right, as opposed to working with somebody who's done this 1,000 times over, and they're gonna
hmm
show you how to do it in 15 minutes or a year, right?
yeah,
Um, and
yeah,
that is
and,
really,
yeah, and it comes down to every single business that is ran like that when the owner thinks they need to do all by themselves, they need to figure out themselves. Like everyone is reinventing the wheel constantly.
yeah. And you can't
So
you can't do it all yourself. There's so much to do when you're, especially if you're doing a good job. Like those ones who are doing it themselves, right? They're probably doing a great job. They're probably the genius with 1,000 helpers, right? They're great, and everyone else is kind of subpar, or they don't even
mhm,
have anyone else, right? They're a one man show.
yeah, but that's the thing. Like so, I think there's something that you noticed, and I love the fact that you and your brother you figure out this opportunity to buy. You went for a specialist, which is like your dad, and your dad was wise enough to say, like, you know what, I'm gonna stick to my lane. I know this. Figure out the opportunity, and that's it. Like that's why it worked, right? And then you guys figure out like, oh, we can turn this thing over. It's like freaking hell, like doubled the company in like 5 years. Like okay, it's like there are people in there that are like 10, 20 years that they've never doubled themselves, right? That
Yeah,
right? They stuck into a point that they're like running for 10 years that they can't grow like 50%,
yeah. And
right?
it's
So,
uncomfortable, that sort of growth, right? Like a lot of people don't do it just purely because they're not comfortable making the decisions, and they think about it and they say, oh, it could be great, whatever, but I'm really scared to actually try these things.
yes,
Whereas
exactly.
the true value comes in from, let's try things, let's see what breaks.
Yeah,
let's
yeah,
let's maybe not break things too much where you can't recover, but let's try a few things and change a few things around. Let's add a service. Let's do some like low risk things. And those changes, if you may, like you talk about failure, you may fail 10 times, but you get one that hits
hmm
and you're off to the races. And that was ultimately what we did, is we tried 100 things and 5 things stuck, and those 5 things just compounded over time.
yeah, yeah. And there is this thing that it's just like the knocking the door, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's the reps. You put the reps in there, you're gonna make the mistakes. And one thing that you said, like some people they are afraid of trying. It's the one of the skills of successful business owners and entrepreneurs is like being a bit risk averse compared to the average Joe,
Yeah. Absolutely.
right? Because even like when I discuss with close friends or family that they don't own a business, when I say like, look, I took all the money and then I didn't pocket it, I just
Yeah.
put it back into
Put
the
it back
company.
in.
Why did you do that? Like you could be driving, and I'm like, I don't care about the car that I drive.
Yeah.
Actually, it's like give me any car that I don't get wet
Yeah.
and like take me from point A to point B without braking. I'm good with that car. Like,
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
I don't
Who
have
wants
that.
a Lamborghini when you could build an amazing company with great people and a legacy, right?
Yeah, and I don't know. Like, I remember a story that like when I used to work for one of the agencies that I own, right? So I bought it from my bosses, right? The story of the of heart, right before you. So and when I was there, I was an employee, and we were like having a chat, and then suddenly some guys like, "Well, if you won the lottery, because the lottery in the UK was a huge," and then like, "What would you do?" And then I'm like, it took me like 5 minutes to think about it. I said, "I think I would buy a new bike and an iPad." That was like in
That was it. That was your dream with the
two,
lottery.
2000. Yeah, yeah. I'm like, I think, and then the guy looked at me. I was like, "What? Are you insane? I would buy an island." And I'm like, why the hell would you buy an island? I was like,
To go
no,
live by
because I couldn't
yourself, like what's
stay there and then like walk naked. I'm like, what's wrong with you, man? Like, it's my island. I'm like, who cares? Like, I
yeah,
can get a million and then I can visit like a million islands,
yeah.
right?
You
Like,
can
I
see
don't
the
know. It's
whole
like,
world.
instead
Yeah,
of owning one, I'm like, why would I actually care about owning an island, right? He was joking. I'm not saying that like I come from a poor family, right? Like we were always broke because the business never went flying, right? So for me, we were always scattering. Like so,
so tell me
I,
something.
I, I was, yeah. Go ahead.
Today, like that question is interesting. Today, if you won the lottery, how did your answer change? What would you
Oh
do
man,
today?
I'm like, I would buy so many businesses.
It's
like,
funny.
like,
I have the
like
same answer.
exactly.
It's funny.
Yeah, yeah. Like I would either invest in myself, learning from people that are way above me, like because one of the biggest unlocks as well when I made the jump from being an employee to going after businesses, like Cody Sanchez was the first one that talking about like seller financing and then how you can buy and all these kind of businesses that you can buy. I'm like, right? And literally like it was because of that that I took the plunge, and I was doing business coaching with this agency, and then the guys were burnt out, and as a joke they said like, oh, I like, do you know anyone that wants to buy an agency? And then I know that they were in financial trouble,
Yeah,
and I had just given them the plan to get out of the trouble,
yeah.
and they joked, and I'm like, look, if you're
No
not
way.
joking, like maybe you should consider me.
Yeah,
And then through that joke, I was like, you see, this is the risk averse piece. And
right.
for me, it was like, oh my God, like it's the biggest debt I had in my life. My wife was like, no, don't do that. Find another job now. I know. It's like, I'm over.
Yeah,
Like, I'm going to do that. And then through that, like in a year and a half, like I realized that. And then I worked on Digivate, the agency, for about like 7 or 8 months, turning things around. And like first month was already better. Like in 3 months, it was like a brand new thing, right? Super profitable. So I turned that thing around. I'm like, oh, I knew because I was doing business coaching. It's like exactly the same business 101 everywhere, right? The basics is the same. If you take care of that, exactly, right? But the basics for me is basics. For people that they have no clue about it, is like rocket science. I'm like, okay, pay me, and I. But the thing is that one thing that I realized is exactly what you and your brother realized, and what you realized after that. It's like I bought a business and I turned it around. And then like some months later, another opportunity came, and then like I ended up becoming partners, 50% of the other company. I start up because I had skills that I didn't have to put my money necessarily up front,
Yeah.
but my skills made the thing grow,
Right.
right?
So the
And now like I
opportunity
have
bred more
so
opportunity and
exactly,
skills
and
you
then I'm
built.
exactly, and then I'm like, I saw the pattern. I'm like, look, I am actually great at turning companies around. So
Right.
instead of running one company, I'm going to go after other companies to acquire them and then grow them together with whoever is the operator, right? So, and then because I had to exclude myself from my own company, I know how to do that too.
Right. So it taught you another skill to build upon.
And I'm like, look, yeah, I kind of already knew, but I'm like, I had to do it by myself. And that's like, I had to do it with myself because I was working on in the business and I want to work on the business. And when I did that, you find someone to take that responsibility, which is part of what you were explaining about the EOS, right? I'm like, cool, I found someone. Your responsibility, right? You're accountable for this. What I need is like we have KPIs. You have to do this. This is and that's it. It's up to you, right? And then it came the whole AI thing as well, which just put everything on steroids for me. And that's how it is. And then like the pattern of like acquiring these companies and growing them together, and now they help each other within the group.
And now
It's
it's
like
just rocket
mind blowing.
fuel, right? It's
Exactly. And the owners of the other companies, they are not alone anymore. They are brilliant at some bits. And now I'm taking them out of the things that they don't like to do it, that they are not brilliant. So they only do what they are brilliant at.
so you're putting a bunch of brilliant people in a room, taking
Yeah.
away the
And
stuff they don't like, and then watching them flourish essentially.
exactly. And then like what they're gonna do is like it's I was having a discussion with another company now that we are in the process, right? Of acquisition. And I'm like, look, if you had to kind of like pick one thing that you do, like what would that be? Because that's going to be my goal to take all the rest out of you, and you're going to do that because that's where you shine, right? So and and the thing that you mentioned about the financial woman in Trinidad, like literally you kind of that's what you do when you have a group. Like you take the person that is the most brilliant in that area, finance, and it becomes the CFO, look after everything. Like exactly, it's like economies of scale. Literally, when you start to do that, right? But these like looking back some years ago, like what the hell are you talking about? If I were listening to myself in the future, like what the hell is this guy talking about? But this is kind of like all the mistakes that I had to do, like to get here, and all the decisions of investing in myself through courses, like through communities that I joined, right? It's like I pay a lot of money to be in here and to have the connections that I need to be here and up, right? And everyone now that joins me in this, all the business owners that are joining me in this, like
They all
they
benefit
leverage
from that.
that. Yeah, yeah, right? It's like they don't have to pay. I mean, like I become part of the company. It's like that baggage, that good baggage, hopefully, that I bring, it will unlock things. And then instead of growing their businesses in 5 years,
Mm.
like you did, for example, now
Yeah,
it's like we can
we can
speed
do this
up
every
the
year.
process. Exactly, exactly,
Mm.
because of these mini hacks, right?
Mm.
So, and that's why you and I we clicked because of that. It's like we come from different experiences that are similar, and I'm like,
And
why
now it's
why we're
rocket
not
fuel,
doing
right?
things together?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you put
well,
those
yeah,
ears, you
exactly.
put those minds together, and you get something special.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you
yeah.
you invest a lot in self development.
Oh yeah.
That's interesting. We go back to the lottery example. I was having this conversation with my wife the other day. It wasn't really so much, if you win the lottery, but let's say you come into a big capital event or you're making all the money in the world every year. What are you going to do with it, right? The one thing I told her that I wanted to do was just that. It's like if I had just an unlimited budget, or even if I had like a budget every year that I could just put towards like doing courses, meeting with people further ahead of me, all these like that's what I would do. That's I mean,
Yeah, you have to like, because there are two ways to look at that, like where you are and where you want to be, right? When you are, at least this is how I see my life, right? So I never stop learning, but more than that, I keep applying things, right? So there are many things that I want to learn to be at a higher position. So I want the main group that I'm creating, like the creative group, to be in a position so I can start creating other groups as well with different kind of services. I can figure that out by myself, by YouTube videos, reading books, chatting to AI, things like that. Or I can take a shortcut and pay someone that already knows how to do that, and they're gonna hold my hand and they're gonna take me there in like half a year, 1 year. That, like,
and they'll
why
show you
why
the
will
whole
I
path,
burn
right?
10 years of my life?
Yeah. You know, I had to that 10 years of your life thing you just mentioned. So I have this was probably about a year or two ago. But at the time, I was running my business and things were going well and we were doing great. But business is hard, right? So I came into this little point and I was like, I don't want to be in this business anymore. Like, I want to get out and I want to find something else to do and all that. So my big idea was like, all right, I want to be in insurance, right? Insurance was like, I was researching insurance. I was spending all my time looking at things about insurance. I was like, insurance is where it's at, right? I Where that came from was I was looking at business for sale. I saw the financials for insurance one. I was like, the margins on this thing are insane. Like it's the best business in the world. So I was like, that's it. That's what I'm gonna spend my life doing, right? So one of the steps in that I took was I reached out to a friend of mine who has an uncle, and he's since become a friend. He's like in his 80s, right? But he's built one of the largest insurance companies in Trinidad and across. He's done very well for himself, right? So I reached out to him and I met with him and I said, all right, I want to be in insurance. This is what I'm going to do the rest of my life, whatever. And within 10 minutes of just like he asked me a few questions and little things like that, he was like, you don't want to be in insurance. I'll tell you why. And he laid out all these different reasons. And he's like, this is not the business for you. And I remember at the moment I was crushed. I was like, this guy knows more about this than I'll ever know, right? He's been doing it fucking 50 years at this point, right? He's been doing it since he was 20, and now he's But just to your point, is like, if I had not had that conversation, because when I did really sit down and think about it, I was like, this guy is absolutely right. Like, I didn't consider all these different things, and this actually isn't the best. And he was like, look, stick to doing what you're doing, double down on that. That's what you know, that's what you're best at, and just keep going on your path. Things will happen for you. At the time, I was like, that's not the answer I want to hear, right? So I kept pushing on it. But when I really sat, I was like, this guy's right. And this guy actually just saved me like 3 years of going down a rabbit
Yeah,
hole that I had no business going into, right?
yeah,
So just to your point,
yeah.
it's like when you find those people and they see ahead of you because they've been where you want to be, right? Or they've been where
Hmm.
you think you want to be.
Yeah, and to the point of this story, it's like he showed you the way that I read,
Yeah.
right? The story. It's like he showed you that you're a specialist in pumps, that you're already doing that. Like, why don't you keep doing that? Like, we get bored when things are going okay, right? Like, but it's still like this is where we are good at. Like, why the hell every time we want, it's the shiny object syndrome. We want something shiny here, something shiny there, because this is exciting. It's kind of a new thing, right? Some people are more like, okay, I'm gonna just do that. This is what I know. Like, so you and I probably we have more of a bit of the shining object syndrome. And I know that I can be like that, so I put guardrails in there. I
yeah,
put people as guardrails, saying like, these are the accountability partners. As they look at me, they know that I do that. They're like, shiny object syndrome. I'm
yeah,
like, you're
for
right.
sure.
Okay,
I think
cool. Let me keep it right.
you and I are similar in the sense that you could correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I'm getting. We've become comfortable with failure because we've put ourselves in so many different spots, right? And we've been comfortable with like the hard stuff, right? That's where we shine. That's where the best things happen. So when it gets easy and things are going smooth, that's when we kind of start to freak out, and we're like, all right, we gotta find something hard again because this is too easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. I don't know if do you know Dan Martell?
mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Dan Martell talks about like rough childhood usually mm, prepares you to these rough situations, right? And chaotic life. So I'm not saying that my childhood was rough. It's in certain aspects they were, right? It was not like the life that I can give to my kids, for
yeah.
example,
It was
right?
no fairy
I
tale,
mean,
but you had a decent
yeah,
life, right?
exactly. I'm sure that they have that they will have some scars, right? But there were different scars that I had to go through that. So, but I was used to chaos, and even you, like moving to another country when you are like in your 14, like early teen, young, it's like this is tough.
Yeah,
Like I don't have this experience.
yeah,
My kids are kind of having somewhat, right? But that thing changes you. It leaves the scars in there. So it was chaotic for you. That's why I assume that's why you didn't want to engage with the school. I assume that before in Trinidad you were going to school. Okay, maybe you didn't like it, but like
yeah,
it
yeah. I
became
was getting by.
unbearable in here.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I think these chaotic states, like we can navigate in so much trouble that when the sea is peaceful, right? Like
yeah.
Demertel
It's
talks about
boring.
hand
Like you have
grenade.
nothing to do, right?
Sometimes you take an action to auto destroy or make things harder in your own business. He
Yeah,
calls it a hand grenade because you
right.
need the chaos
Yeah.
to keep living,
You throw a grenade in
right?
the room just to break something because you want something to fix,
Exactly.
right?
And I'm like, okay, like I need to fix this, like,
That's
and
good.
everyone's panicking.
Yeah,
I can handle this, and I know that it can be like that. So I'm like, okay, like, let's do the boring things. Sometimes I'm like, oh my god, if it gets too boring, time to hand it over to someone else. But that boring thing, creating lead generation, right? Like for example, for every single business, I love the sales part, right? Like I love having this kind of chats and everything with anyone, right? I love the big problems when people are like, I'm burned out, like, take this. Like, I had a conversation with another agency owner last week, and he was like, I want out. I'm like, we're doing pretty well, but I want out. Like, buy this thing out of me. I'm like, okay, let's do that. Let's figure something out,
take
right?
it on a notch, and
But
it's yeah,
exactly. But he's like, this is chaos. Like, and he started talking about all the pain points that he has internally with the team, with clients, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, yes, party. And for him, it's like,
he does. He wants out. He
right?
doesn't want anything to do with it, right? Yeah,
Exactly, right? But this is because, well, you and I, for example, we navigated through these murky water,
yeah.
and then
We're
we're
now out
like,
on the other side. We're comfortable with
yeah,
cleaning
no,
off all
but
the
we have
messes.
to pay attention.
Yeah,
But one thing that I see that you notice as well is like, oh, we acquired new company, we grew it, like we can do this, and this is actually the pattern, right? It's not necessarily inside of one company, and that's when I say like I noticed that too. As I said, we are reinventing the wheel individually, right? But I'd rather pay someone to be a mentor, to be a coach, even though like a lot of people they have like bad feelings when we talk about coaching, especially in Brazil. If you say you're a coach, oh my god, like you
they
have to
don't like that
fake
at
it and
all.
call it mentor, but
Right.
it's coaching, right? But it's like people are like, oh, the biggest prejudice ever, right? I'm like, I don't care. Like you're not paying my bills. Like why would I care how you kind of like think of me, right? What I want is to grow, right? So I go for coaches. I go like, and every time I hit a limit in there, I either need to change the coach or I stay there in the community for one specific reason. But all I want is like, how do people have figured it out, the problem that I currently have, right? To go from here to here. It's like, who the hell has done that? How do I get access to that one? And sometimes you have to pay 5K, 10K, 20K to just be there to have access to that person, right? And people are like, they're super judgmental and say, oh, but you're buying these friends. And I'm like, no, I'm buying my knowledge to get there. It's like the hack, the shortcut is to talk to someone who has already figured it out. Why would I freaking reinvent the wheel by myself? It's gonna take me 5 years, 10 years. Why?
And it's really
This
not,
is
it's not
yeah,
buying friends. What you're doing is you're buying access to a room of a bunch of other people who are also buying access to that room. So you're now in a room filled with like-minded individuals who are pushing for the same goals, and you're all pushing each other up, and you also learn from somebody who's been there and done it before, right?
yeah,
That's the value. That's the
yeah. And even there's a clear example. Like I am part of a one community, right? And it's like in any kind of community, you have people in different levels, right? So there are some first graders, like there are other ones that are in high school, right? If we talk about grades, right, as an example, which I use the same analogy in there. Like you have some business owners in there, one man band, that when you ask them like look, how much do you make on a monthly basis? They're like, oh, I don't like to share this. I'm like, this is shame because you're not paying your bills. That's literally it, right? It's like because they have a bad relationship with money. So how can you be a business owner and you have a bad relationship with money? And like, oh no, and then they mask it like, oh, but it's my private data. If you send a form asking for this, like, what's your annual recurring revenue? It's like, oh, what you're gonna do with this data? I'm like,
yeah,
dude, it's like I'm here to help you. It's
yeah,
like you go to a doctor, like I have this pain. Okay, can you take off your clothes? It's like, oh, but no.
yeah. I
I'm
don't
like,
need to see
okay,
my
so
body. I haven't
go.
worked out in 10 years.
I mean, cultural differences
Yeah, for sure, for
part,
sure.
right? Like, but my point is that why would you go to a specialist to solve your problem and then you want to withhold the information? It's like you're not business savvy enough.
Yeah, you're not,
You're
and
you
you're
you
also not giving them enough info to do what they have to do, right? If they're holding on to the info like it's gold, like what are you really doing? What you're asking for help, but you're not giving the information that's required for the help. So you almost, it's kind of a recurring pattern, right? You
yeah.
created this
It's
situation because of these same things, right?
yeah. It reminded me of Gollum. Gollum, my precious.
Yeah,
Like yeah, like die with that ring,
for sure.
right? Like die with that little thing, right?
Yeah,
And it's just like for me, I was there. It's like I was broke, right? Several moments of my whole childhood to early 20s. I have a friend that says like I was selling my lunch to buy my dinner, right? Like
right.
situation, right? So,
Yeah,
it was like that. So for me, I understand being broke,
yeah.
and
You've been
I've
there.
been ashamed enough
Yeah,
to know that I understand why you may be reluctant to show me your numbers, but I'm like, do you want to be in there? Because if you tell me some stuff, I have experience enough to say like with some minor tweaks, you can go from here to here in a
but
month.
I've found, I talk to a lot of business owners, right? We're actively looking for acquisitions, and I've talked to businesses where they're doing anywhere from like 200K on the small end to like 100 million on the top end, right? So, but I've talked to tons of them, and the one thing that I've found throughout the conversations is just like you said, the ones that are, it's almost become like a filter, right? Because the ones that are like close guard and they're like, we're having a one-to-one obviously I'm not going to share this online, like revenue and profit and all these things, but if we're having a one-to-one conversation, you and I ask you a simple question, that's what is your revenue? Like, what does the company make? We need to know that if we're going to keep going on this road, right? We're going to find out at some point anyway. But what I've found is that the ones that their business is chaos and they're not doing well, and they're always the ones that are like very close guarded, right? Maybe it's embarrassment, maybe it's fear, maybe a whole bunch of things. But the ones that have like built an incredible business that I actually look up to and I'm like, this guy has built something incredible. Those are the ones that they're usually like, yeah, my revenue's this, my profit's that. We made a loss this one year, here's why. But here's how we recovered and all that. And they're very straightforward and they're very open. It's like open book policy, right? But what I've found is that those people, when you actually do end up working with them, you do end up going through the process. Those ones that are the open book and those ones that have, they're just very straightforward. They're actually the easiest to deal with. So you almost kind of see that from day one. You can use that as a filter. The ones that are like, oh, I'm not going to share this and I don't trust you and all that. Those are the ones that you can kind of see and you gauge that reaction to be like, all right, if that's how it goes on such a simple question one to one, we can see how it's probably going to play out. I mean, imagine you buy the business from that someone like that, and then that's how they start. You can imagine it's going to roll out like that, and it's probably not going to go in a good path, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah. And the whole partnership, because I call this real partnership, right?
yeah,
Because even if you buy the whole business, like there is a transition period, right?
yeah,
Or if you get like a some sort of equity in there,
yeah,
then it's a long-term relationship. So this is when during the due diligence, I do, you know that, right? Like we have these conversations, and that's when we start to judge because, and I call this the dating phase, right? So I do a due diligence for 3 months, 90 days. We are gonna work together because I don't know if I can work with you, right? We just met each other. I don't know. Let's figure that out. Like I don't know if you want me to work with you, if I want to work with you. So let's test. Let's go through it. Yeah, right. And that's when both sides they do a real due diligence. When they don't show the numbers, it is for me a red flag. And usually it's like, okay, you're not even making 100K in a year, and I get it. I've been there. Cool, right? No, usually it's even less than that. Like they're not making 5K in a month.
yeah.
They're like, oh,
I actually had that
and it's a bit of shame.
like a
Usually
few
it's a
months
shame.
ago. I was talking to this one company, and we were actually getting pretty close to doing a deal. But when it really came down to it, even down to the stage of like, okay, we're gonna sign a deal on something, like we're gonna work together. They weren't willing to share financials, and I was like, guys, how do you expect us to do a deal with you if we don't know what the company makes? Like this is a financial investment, right? And at that point, like
Yeah,
I was like, all right, you know what, this
yeah,
probably isn't gonna work for us. It's not, and they were surprised. They were like, you know, we wanted so bad to work with you. I was like, guys, you haven't given me the information that I need to be able to work with you. And it really is a good gauge, like you say, like you find out who somebody is just based on your little interaction. You pick up little things each time. And sometimes you almost have to, you have to have that hard conversation and be willing to step away. And, we talk about all the time the deal heat, right? You just want to do a deal, you want to get this thing going. But the reality of it is the deal is just the first step. When you're actually in there, it could be a lifelong journey if you're not careful, right? Um,
yeah.
so
Yeah,
it's
it's a marriage. From my
yeah,
experience as
that's
well,
the
it's
perfect way
more
to
like
put it.
I do this dating phase because of that, and then I like to be as transparent as possible. I say, look, I need you to think about every little aspect that I could, pardon my French, to screw you.
Yeah.
And I call them, like I call it the screw me list. Like think about every possible way that I
Mm,
could screw you, and then I am going to clarify every single one of them. And maybe it's something that I'm like, you know what, you're right. I never thought about that. I don't know. Right? But I'm like, I also have my list
yeah.
because we're like,
Oh, so then you write
have
all
you
your
thought
list
about
as
that?
well.
Exactly. I'm
So
like,
you're
look,
both.
this is the way that it will, and and I had a deal ready. I was like, I do a deal like when we sit to do the contract, I go piece by piece, paragraph by paragraph. I'm like, this is it. This is what's written. What do you understand? Do you have any doubts? No. Cool. Next. So I sit by their side and do that. I had a deal that was at this stage, and then there was like one thing that, like, when I said like, yes, I do have, there is a fee for that. And no, we don't need a fee. I'm like, you want me to work for you for free, grow your business? If that, yeah, yeah, we already know that the whole business. I'm like, as far as I remember, you said that you had several businesses and they all broke. So you already know how to do business? I'm like, I'm confused. And that's when that was a red flag for me, right? And they weren't being too straightforward. They were straightforward with the previous numbers that they were making on the companies that broke. Right? But with that one, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Right.
Yeah, you actually
So,
start to see
so,
it. It's
so
always
yeah,
funny.
yeah,
I find it's always funny when you see a company that's not making money or losing money, and the person thinks that they know how to run the business the best, and that you can,
yeah,
help solve
yeah,
the problem, right?
yeah. Yeah, it is. That's when I say about the coaching part, right? The life coaching, it's a limiting belief sometimes. First, they think that they should be doing all by themselves, right? And then there's the shame that I couldn't figure out by myself. Therefore, how I'm gonna look to my team, right? How my family is gonna look at me, and I'm like I couldn't care less. Maybe I worry about how my wife and my kids look at me, right? My parents, possibly my brothers, I love them, but I'm like, don't care, man.
Fuck them.
Like, they don't pay my bills. Well, some of them sometimes we do pay each other bills as gifts, right?
Right.
But the thing is that it's business, right? And then I'm like, okay, so, and the people that are more stubborn with this, I'm like, okay, like whenever we have an interaction here, I'm gonna propose something to you. There are three things that you could do. You can close and do it with me. You can do it with someone else, or you can do nothing.
Right.
And the
Stay in the
doing
same spot
nothing
you're in.
is huge, like because it's like I can figure out by myself. I don't
Right.
need any specialist. It's fine, and I don't doubt you, but I can put my money on it that it's gonna take you years, if not a decade at least, to get there.
And
Right?
that's the
I
true
don't say
value add,
that
right?
because
It's
I like exactly. I don't want to be like uh, for even though it's one of the greatest feelings of is to say I told you so. It's like I don't think about that. I try not to do it, right? But if someone comes to me and I'm like, let's do this, I'm like, okay. At that moment I start to collect the data to figure out, can we work together well, right? Like, does this person has the same values, the same like drive? Are they like, do they have a bias for action? Do they overthink? Like, and then I'm like, can and are they coachable?
right. Yeah. And then you do
And
the
that's when I'm
lemonade
like,
test on top of that, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I
No, I'm
never thought
joking,
about the
but
lemonade test, but
yeah.
it is one thing. It's like, and when I see people, for example, I currently I'm super into the creative agencies world, right? And I'm having a conversation with some that they started the company from zero, they grew, but then they hit that ceiling, right? It doesn't matter what's the number. Sometimes it's 500K, sometimes it's like 1 million, sometimes like 2 million. Like every time you want to double the company, it's
You
kind of
always
like,
hit a
okay,
ceiling,
that's
right?
the ceiling. Exactly. And then you're like, okay, it's like I'm doing everything. It's like, how can I do that? Right. And literally, usually it's because they are too much in the day-to-day stuff. They're making stuff that they hate to do it, but nobody does it. Or they hired someone that is not doing a good job, but they don't want to hire someone else because they hate hiring, and they'll like replace even but and then I say, like, what if we do that? Would you be opposed to that? Yeah, it's fine, but I don't want to do it. I don't want to do the hiring. You do it. I'm like, cool. I'll find someone else. I can do the hiring. I like that too. But so for me, it's more like that. But if they're no, 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 I'm gonna keep it doing because I am the most amazing person on the face of the earth, and then nobody can do anything like I do. And then I use Demartel as well. It's like, if someone can do 80% of what you can do, that's 100% awesome.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it.
You know, I heard something, you talk about Cody Sanchez, right? I heard something
Yeah,
from her a few years ago that it stuck with me. Similar principle to like if somebody could do it 80% or 60% even of what you can do, they're good enough. But she took it a step further and she said, if you get one person that's 60% of what you do, that's great. If you get 10 people that can do 60% as well as you, that's 600% improvement on what you can do yourself, right? 10 by
Yeah.
6. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
and
And
that really
but this is
clicked
a
for me.
mindset. Yeah, yeah. But this is a mindset that. But sometimes it's more like people come with objections to whatever you're proposing, and then your job is to kind of change that,
You
right?
know,
Like it's the
to,
mindset, right? If you can change their mindset to where you want them to be or where
yeah,
they want it to be, mission accomplished.
right.
That they are coachable.
One thing I learned in the last couple of years too. We talk about the 60% and the if you can find someone that does 60% as well as you, you're set, right? There's a higher hack that I've learned from, from people further ahead than me, right? So you can find the people that are 60%, 80%, and that's great. That's all well and great, right? But if you can find someone who can do things 100% or 120 or 150%, if you
Yeah, I
can
was going
find
to say
people
that.
who do it better than you and you hire those people,
Oh
you don't
yeah,
have to have 60% minions. You could have a full partnership, a team of people that can do these things far better than you could ever do. And that is the absolute hack. The ones that are doing it right, they find the people that could do this far better than they can. They're hiring them on, they're paying them well, and then they're letting them run. And that is
yeah,
really,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
the unlock.
This is the part that I would say when you reinvest in the company, right? For example, at Digivate, I was doing some of the videos. I like to do some stuff in the beginning. I like to learn a bit, but I know that it's going to be not good,
Yeah.
right? It's going to be good enough to get it started. And then I can show someone and say, can you do better than this? Yes. Right. And then I hire them. Right. So now I've made a big investment in my video director and I showed like this is what I want. This is how much I can do. You see the gap in here. You have to fill in this gap, right? So I had a lot of people in the team, my family say, "Why you're doing that?" Right? It's like because it's an investment. I know how important this is. First of all, it's like I'm doing myself, so first I want to take my time back. Second, it will be a better quality. It will open doors that I cannot even perceive at this moment, right? But this is the risk taker, right? The being a bit risk averse, right? I'm like, I do that. I'm comfortable with that. Like, oh, maybe like, oh, but then like the profits will drop, and then and I'm like, okay, and then we figure out a way to leverage that to close
Yeah.
different deals.
And then the profit may drop today,
Yeah,
tomorrow, but we're
yeah,
looking five
exactly.
years ahead, right?
Yeah, yeah. But again, it's like I wanted someone that knew how to do it, right? So she's a specialist. She studied cinema. She worked for TV, right? Like in the news channel.
Mm.
I'm like,
That's your girl.
but she doesn't know she doesn't have a lot of experience on YouTube. I'm like, cool, maybe I can hire someone that knows YouTube, but like hiring someone that comes from the traditional TV as well and knowledge of cinema. It's like the vast majority of YouTubers they don't have that. I'm like,
I have
why
no
don't I
idea.
try that too? It's like because I can always hire someone that knows YouTube,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And
And
then
I'm
you
like,
lock
what
those
if
two
I put them
together.
together? Exactly. And then suddenly I'm like, it's a new category thing. I'm like, yeah, I don't know, right?
Absolutely.
But she's catching up on the whole YouTube. I'm catching up. Goddamn, YouTube University helps, right? LLMs help, right? But it's more like it's a bet, it's a risk, and for me, it's like me betting on the team, on the company, on my knowledge as well. So going back to the 1 million, and maybe that's gonna be the end of this episode. It's you have to take this money and invest in yourself because you are the biggest value,
Yeah, absolutely.
right?
What books are you reading?
Oh, I'm reviewing a lot of stuff lately. I'm reviewing the Dan Martell by Becker Time because I'm working with other owners that I have to show them. I even like discuss the, yeah, it's more like I'm on teaching mode. I'm not reading books. I'm actually in this past month or so, I'm experimenting a lot with OpenClaw and Cloud Code, because in a month I have a workshop that is just drawing things. It's to talk about AI without touching technology, right? So it's literally business operation 101. People don't understand that, right? So this is what I'm doing. So I held off a bit on the books, and I'm going through some Alex Hormozy books as well. It's like watching the same movie several times. Every time you go through it, you see another pearl that you couldn't see before,
Yeah,
right?
I love
So
it.
this is literally what I'm doing. But yeah, how
Amazing.
about you? What are you reading?
I started reading recently a book by John Rockefeller. As John Rockefeller's 38 lessons to his son, right? Or 38 letters. So before he died, he wrote 38 letters to his son, just teaching life principles, business principles, all these different things, right? And it wasn't supposed to be published, but I don't know, I guess, I don't know how it came about, but it was him to his son just saying, like, here's my life advice before I die. So I've been reading that, and honestly, that book is changing my life. Like,
All
it's
right, okay.
incredible. I mean, this is the guy, he was the richest man who ever lived, right? He built the best business. I mean, from Charlie Munger's perspective, right? He says Standard Oil was the best business that ever existed, right? Perfect supply chain control and all those different things. So I'm reading through that, and that it's a game changer for sure.
I'm gonna read that one
No, it's
or
incredible.
download the
I
audiobook.
highly
Yeah,
recommend. I've sent it to all my family, a few friends. Like it's an amazing book for sure.
yeah, amazing, amazing. Look, we could be speaking here for 2 extra hours, but
Absolutely.
I think we are ending up in a good moment. So I just wanted to thank you for being here for this conversation, for getting to know you a bit more. And if someone wants to get in touch with you, where is the easiest channel for them
The
to
best
to,
place
to
to reach out is probably LinkedIn. You know, Luke Mary on LinkedIn. You'll see my companies, you'll see my page. That's the easiest way to reach me. Check my messages and we can chat there for sure.
All right. Perfect. Yeah, we're gonna put all your social media channels in here. How
Amazing.
but I always ask because people always they have their preferred way.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
let's see.
LinkedIn is the best for me for sure.
All right. Perfect. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Gladly. I appreciate you.